All right. Good morning. Thank you, the students who are here. Thank you guys for joining us. It's nice to see. I think I recognize some of you guys who've come out to the Hub of Prosperity Farm, the school farm. Yes, I recognize some of you guys. We're looking forward to your next visit out there. Today we have a very interesting discussion. I think that is extremely relevant for you guys as students, others that are in the audience. This is around food procurement. So like the food that you guys get to eat in your schools, where does it come from? And how can we kind of meet the needs of our students that also help our economy? So today you heard a couple of presentations. One was on obesity and diabetes. And as the presenter mentioned, this region has some of the highest rates of obesity and diabetes in the entire country. The second presenter came and said some of our food-related diseases can be linked to diet. What we need to eat are more fruits, more vegetables, more nuts, avocados, some of the other answers that you guys yelled out. So some interesting facts that I want to just set the table here. One is that although we have the highest rates of obesity and diabetes, we are also the leading area of the production of fruits and vegetables in the entire state of Texas. So Hidalgo County, Stark County, Willacy County, and Cameron County, we produce more fruits and vegetables than any other region in the entire state of Texas. We also lead the country in the production of sorghum, a grain. We also are the leading producers of sugar, as well as the leading production of producers of vegetables, specialty crops, including vegetables and fruits. We have some of the highest concentrations of organic farms in the entire state, according to a report done by the National Center for Appropriate Technology. So here on one hand, we have food-related diseases. We have no access to fruits and vegetables on one hand. And on the other hand, we lead the entire state in what could very well help some of our issues that we have in our schools and in our communities. So today's discussion is how do we connect citrus grown here in the Rio Grande Valley with the students and the communities in which they're grown? Seems like a very easy question to answer, but you'll hear from the panelists today just how difficult what we can do to get from here to there. Just so the audience knows, this is a live stream broadcast. It's being broadcast across the country because this very topic is something of interest to not just us here in the Rio Grande Valley, but across the country. So today we have a few very important panelists who can contribute to this discussion. Ms. Carmen Ocañas, who's seated here, she represents the Food and Nutrition Team at Region 1 Educational Service Center, where she coordinates the technical assistance and training for the region. That includes public schools, private schools, and child and adult care food programs. She has been a child nutrition professional and the director of food services for 25 years at various districts across the region, overseeing a staff of over 200 and a multi-million-dollar budget. And she's led the conversion of 2 districts from traditional to Provision 2 status, eliminating processing of lunch applications, and implemented various initiatives to increase breakfast participation by more than 400%, lunch by more than 150%, and a la carte sales by 225% in the first year of this program. She also holds the National Recognized School Nutrition Specialist credential and the certificate from the School Nutrition Association. I'd also like to bring up Dr. Sharon Roberts, who you guys all know. Dr. Roberts began her career in education in Mission ISD in 1989, first as a classroom teacher, and after earning her doctoral degree in educational leadership from UTPA, and now UTRGV, she's also served as coordinator for advanced academics, the director for advanced academics and college readiness, and is currently serving as the deputy superintendent for curriculum and instruction. And she is, as you know, is very committed to student success and is motivated by the passion of her staff and teachers for just really cultivating and inspiring new ways for students to pursue the colleges and careers of their choice. I'd also like to bring up Mr. Robert Maggiani, who is a sustainable ag specialist for the National Center for Appropriate Technology. He has previously been an organic vegetable grower here in Texas and in Mexico, and has given hundreds of presentations at conferences and workshops across the U.S. and in Mexico. He's authored and co-authored just a number of publications, including Organic Specialty Crop Production in Texas, the Handbook, and is currently a member of the Texas International Produce Association and the International Committee of the San Antonio Livestock Exposition. He sits on various boards, including the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, and as a board member for the Common Market, which he represents today. And finally, last but not least, I'd like to bring up Mr. Mike and Jesus Lozano. They represent Triple J Organics. So they are a farm established in 1995 in Mission, Texas. They began as a one-man hobby farm on an abandoned 10-acre orchard, and which they purchased in 1983 after the freeze. Their first packing began in the family's backyard, and they are just loading it onto a pickup truck. And as the business began to grow and the trees produced more fruit, they expanded the square foot area of their packing shed and their operation just to meet the demands of the market. So Triple J Organics, LLC, they take pride in its fresh and tree-ripened, genuine, certified organic citrus. Mr. Jesse oversees the grove care involved in the production with Mike Lozano, and they also harvest and pack every single box that come out of their operation. So these four are going to have a discussion to answer this question: how can we get citrus grown in Mission into Mission area schools, right? So this is food that you guys can eat and food that can help address some of the issues that you've heard about today. The conversation will be moderated by Mr. Hernan Colmenero. He has worked in instruction and operations in public school education for 10 years. And after farming for a school district in Donna, he standardized and scaled a replicable farm-to-school program that is modeled across Texas and Louisiana. He most recently founded the Institute for Ecology, Scholarship, and Health, which he works to propagate the natural world for the benefit of our health and our livelihoods. So these are our panelists today. If I could just take another couple of minutes to just give you some context in addition to the panelists. The clicker's right here. So this is part of a conversation we have. UTRGV got a grant from the WF Kellogg Foundation. We received their support to help jumpstart conversations like you guys are going to hear today about what it means to have a sustainable food system in South Texas. As I mentioned to you, this is an area with a lot of food-related diseases and food insecurity, but also have the resources because we grow enough food to feed our population. The UTRGV Agroecology Program has done a study that says that just with the food that we grow, we can feed more than 2.5 times our own population. And yet we have all these food-related issues, and our goal is to have conversations about how we can connect the food that we grow to the communities that live and work and study in those places. So these are our mission. This is our goal for our project. We're going to have conversations like this all throughout the year, and hopefully we're going to culminate here in a food summit at the end of the academic year that you guys all will be invited to participate in, either as a student or as faculty here in the audience, or others that are probably listening in. We would invite you to check in with us out on our website at rgvagroecology.com for a list of events that we have related to this. I might as well announce now as well that we have a small mini grant program for partners who are engaged in this kind of work. You can learn a little bit more about the mini grant program at our website. Here's the link here, or you can just go onto rgvagroecology.com and find some information there where we would like to support the work that some community-based organizations are doing to help towards the conversations that we're going to have for the rest of the year. Okay, so let me turn it over to Mr. Colmenero, who will help introduce the panelists as well as start off our conversation.
Yeah, thanks a ton, Alex. Here, let me get these mics to the panelists. Can you pass those down, please? To our speakers over there. And the clicker. Alex. All right, so again, my name is Hernan Colmenero. Thank you, Alex, for introducing us. To provide some backdrop, I know Alex just provided a bit of background information, but I do want to touch on what a bit of the school meal program and how that works. And that's important because the discussion around that we're going to have today is going to be around that. School meals function very differently from other agencies or restaurants or institutions that serve food. It's not, if you go to a restaurant, the only thing that restaurateur had to do was file for a few permits from the city or the county and put up the restaurant, follow a few compliance things. When dealing with school meals, because we're serving students and adults at times, there's a whole slew of policies that need to be followed or adhered to. And those come from the federal government, USDA, and they also come from the state. In our case, it's Texas Department of Agriculture. Now, one of our presenters, Carmen, will go over a little bit more in depth, but I want to provide a bit of a backdrop. Those compliance pieces are what make school meals so challenging to work with, specifically with the topic that we're addressing today. How do we get local citrus into a local school district? It's not as easy as it would seem because of all of the compliance that goes into it. Because there's so much compliance, because these are funded through taxpayer dollars. We also call that public funds. Because those people watching, and our audience here, your parents, siblings, everyone is contributing these tax dollars so that all students can eat in the classroom. So there's a lot of scrutiny behind how that money is used and how it's utilized. That's the backdrop for school meals and how that works. Oh, and one other thing, every meal that is served in a cafeteria, that is reimbursed by the state. There's a predetermined amount, and so after serving 1,000 meals, 100,000 meals, the school or the CNP program, the Child Nutrition Program, can earn all of that revenue by serving more meals. Again, so that's a backdrop. I want to allow Mr. Robert Maggiani a few minutes to talk about the common market and their role in all of this. So, yes.
Can you all hear me? Well, good morning, y'all. I am here representing this morning. It's working now, isn't it?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
It's on.
Representing the common market. Common market is a wholesaler, a food wholesaler, that does a lot of things similar to other food wholesalers that you may be aware of. I'm trying to think of a wholesaler that y'all may have seen a lot down here at your school. Nichos is one. Cisco is a very famous wholesaler. A wholesaler, what that really means is someone in the middle. It's in the middle between the farmer who actually starts the food, and the end consumer, which is the school district, or really y'all as students who eat at the cafeteria. Y'all are really the customers, and so we're kind of in the middle. And so common market, if you can see, is it up there? I can tell. Common market is a wholesaler in the sense that we are in the middle between the farmer and we get the food and we deliver it to where it needs to go. But we think we're a little bit different than just a typical wholesaler that exists in the industry. Common market was started about 15 years ago in Philadelphia by a family of community organizers who were in a low-income neighborhood who were trying to figure out ways of how to get good food into places where it wasn't getting into. So one of the things they noticed was there was a couple of disconnects. Not only were the folks in the city not getting the food that they felt like they were really deserving of, the farmers who were not very far away from them. I'm sorry, I'll just use this. The farmers who were close to the area where they lived were also having difficulty making a livelihood. And so there was a disconnect, and they came on the idea after thinking about it at length, what can we do to find a common thread that we can help both of these communities, the rural community of farmers and then the urban community of institutions and kids and families who need to feed their kids and feed themselves good, nutritious food. So that's where they came up with the title, The Common Market. You can think of, when you think of the word market, a marketplace is when you bring buyers and sellers together, right? That's what markets do, of any kind that you want to talk about, whether it's una pulga right down the street or a big market down anywhere. They bring buyers and sellers together. So that's where the name came together. How can we create a marketplace where the farmers can then sell their stuff and create a commonality where they can have a common kind of destiny between the farmers and the consumers of the food. And so Common Market was born in Philadelphia about 15 years ago. About 8 years ago, they started a second location in Atlanta with the same mission. Can you scroll that up, Alex, and show the mission and vision, please, of the Common Market? And then about 4 years ago, they started another facility in Houston. So Common Market, Texas has its facility. And when I say facility, it's a big warehouse where they have big coolers and trucks and just what you know of as a facility. So in a lot of ways, again, we do exactly what wholesalers around the country do, is we move food. We buy food and we resell food and we move it and we keep it at the right temperature and we deliver it at the right temperature and we do all of those things that are required by the industry. But we also make an effort to find specific customers and what we call our anchor institutions in the communities in which they are housed. Schools being probably the major anchor institution in any community. It is the biggest food service operation in any community is typically the school food service. When you just look at dollar volume, it's big business. School food is big business. It's important because everybody, when y'all get older and have kids, you'll realize this, but kids are the most important asset in any community. And so we have a responsibility to take care of y'all as you grow up and provide to you the things that you need to help you have a successful life. And so schools are really the anchor institution that we try to focus on in almost any community where Common Market is built. And we also have a way of focusing on the vendors that we deal with, the farmers, the ranchers, the people who provide the milk, the cheese, whatever it is that we sell. We have a very specific set of requirements that we ask them to go through. It's called an onboarding process. We go to their farm and we go to their ranch and we do an audit of their operation, not only on the farming side, which you would assume that we would do. We go check how they, make sure that they follow all the regulations that exist in the ag industry. But we also ask them questions about what type of a workplace is this for their employees? Do they have a vacation procedure? Do they have an internal complaint procedure where if a worker was to have a complaint about a coworker, are there procedures in place where that can be dealt with and not worry about any recriminations on the part of the workers? We ask them about if they have animals, how do they treat their animals? And we rate them on these things. We have a very sophisticated system. It's based on a system y'all may have heard of called the Good Food Purchasing Program. And so basically what we're saying is that we want our vendors not only to provide good food for ultimate consumers like y'all, but we want them to also to be good citizens, good business citizens, good members of their community. So we actually go to their places of business and we rate them on those aspects of their business. And we sit with them year by year to make sure that they're getting better on all of those metrics. So those are really the main ways that we think common market is different than just a typical wholesaler. We're an actor in the supply chain just like all the other wholesalers. The supply chain, you may not have heard that term, but basically it's how does food get from farmers to y'all as customers in the school cafeteria. We are different, we all serve different roles in that chain, and that's what we're here to do. Basically, again, y'all are our customers. Y'all are the reason why we do what we're doing up here is to help you get the food. And so Common Market, been around for 15 years. We do a lot of things just like any other wholesaler, but we feel like we're a little bit different.
Thank you for that, Robert. So to clarify then, or I guess just to summarize, the Common Market is different from a traditional food distributor in that a traditional food distributor may just interact with a grower or a cooperative of growers. No questions asked, just take the produce, take the product and sell it to whoever is willing to buy. No questions asked, just sort of, business as usual, bottom line. Whereas you actually engage with the farmers, engage with the growers, engage with the producers and say, hey, can we do this better in a more sustainable way? Right. And also educate the consumer and saying, this is better because we're thinking about the people involved. We're thinking about the animals involved. We're thinking about the ecosystem and how it's all working together. And we're trying to make this whole thing a better enterprise for all of us, right? The consumer, the distributors, the producers, the land, and all of the people involved. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's what we call values-based procurement. It's based on things other than just strictly the lowest cost.
Right. That's great. Thank you so much, Robert. Appreciate that. Now, we're going to turn our attention to, go back to the presentation. We're going to have Carmen here, and take it away.
Sure. Thank you. Check, mic check, or maybe I feel more comfortable with this one. Yeah. Put that one in my pocket. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carmen Ocañas. I work with Region 1 Education Service Center. I don't travel light, so I travel heavy, and by that I mean that we brought the entire procurement team from Region 1, and they are the ones that support all of the school districts across Region 1. So we have Lori Ramos, our Director of Purchasing, in the back, and we also have Ms. Rumalda Ruiz, who's our Deputy Director at Region 1. So they will wave back there. And so I kind of dragged them out here this morning to make sure that they listen to what all of the panelists were going to say and also the feedback. I do want to compliment the kids sitting in the audience because honestly, when I walked in, I thought they were college students. So congratulations. That means that you already look the part. So that's good. I see a little bit of veterans and I see Mission High School. Is that correct? All right. If anybody in veterans is a runner, raise your hand. Nobody's a runner yet. I do see a lot of the veterans runners run by the house. A lot of them have a lot of momentum, and some of them I can tell did not eat breakfast because they look like they're running out of gas. So I'll start my presentation. I am going to talk about what we do at Region 1 and how we support the child nutrition directors. As a former child nutrition director, I think I've heard it all. And a lot of it is, sometimes it's hard to hear from students like you, where maybe we serve something on the menu that is not your favorite. But as Hernan mentioned, we have to follow some of the rules and guidance that USDA sets forth that says, like Ms. Beardwood that spoke to you earlier about nutrition, diet, and exercise, and what are the things that you should be consuming, right, for proper growth and mental health, and also to learn, because we follow a big mantra in child nutrition, which is that a hungry child cannot learn. So you cannot be on an empty stomach and try to take a test or a state exam or your SATs coming up, right? So that is extremely important. I am going to probably be kind of looking back and forth, so I apologize for my body language, but at Region 1, we are, our main focus is to assist the child nutrition director with any questions they might have about the service, how to pass their audits, and also training in areas of menu planning, menu development, procurement, and all of the areas associated with the federally funded program. And we, who we are, we represent 46 different school districts in the Region 1 area. We also cover the child and adult daycare food program, and there are about 300 plus contracting entities under that side of the house. There used to be a lot more than that, so if you drive around town and you see little crayons childcare or another adult daycare, those are the ones that we assist also in the food programs for them. During the pandemic, we were saddened to see a lot of some of these daycares close down because they were not in operation, and so we're seeing that slowly come back, and so we're happy to see that. This is the realm of what we cover. Region 1 partners, our food and nutrition program partners with the Texas Department of Agriculture, which is our granting organization. And under that umbrella, we cover all the programs that you see above, but mainly the National School Lunch Program, the school breakfast, the summer feeding, the summer seamless option, the fresh fruit and vegetable program, USDA commodity foods. So I read a lot and I study a lot. It is a lot to take in. It's a very complex program. And it's like Hernan mentioned, because it's federally funded, when the district agrees to take this federal fund to provide the meal and make it appear in your cafeteria, that means that you also agree to follow all the rules and guidelines. And those rules and guidelines come with certain items that need to be on the tray, the whole grains, the fruits, the vegetables, and you're also required as a high schooler to make sure that your tray has at a minimum a half a cup of fruit or vegetable on the tray before you check out with the cashier. Is that correct? You can nod your head, say yes. You've seen the cafeteria lady send you back when you forget it. You have to take it. You cannot check out until that item is on your tray, and that is, of course, at your discretion, your choice. The level of funds on the federal side that come to the Region 1 area, which spans from Laredo all the way to Brownsville. A quick stats, and this is pre-pandemic, of course, because we have not, the dust hasn't settled yet for us to pull and extract these reports. But just to give you an idea, there is a total about $400 million on an annual basis that is coming to the Region 1 to fund the school breakfast, the school lunch, the daycare, and also the school after-school snack, and also that supper that you have been seeing in the last couple of years, right? When you stay behind for tutoring or some kind of an enrichment, there is also a snack and a supper being offered at your school. The Farm Fresh Network, this is a network that TDA has created where you join as a farmer, and it's a mapper. So it identifies what farmer is out there in existence. It's a very easy jot form to fill out. You go and complete it, and you appear in the Texas Department of Agriculture website as being a local farmer. It is not monitored, it is not audited, it is not checked. It only gives me the accessibility of looking at a map and seeing who's out there, who can I call for services or products, or if I want to take a tour of this farm, can I partner with these folks and do this? And they also outline the miles distance to the school district. Understanding school procurement and the school, I took a quick screenshot. Procurement is very, very complex, and I am by no means the expert in procurement. What I do is I help school districts pass their procurement audit. So I am an avid reader and decipher of contracts and things like that. So what we have is just a screenshot of what the process starts. One thing to notate, though, for those that are in the room that are vendors, and mainly also for the students, menu planning for a school district occurs the year before. So it is not something that happens this week for next week. Your child nutrition director would have planned your menu last year. And the reason that that happens is because with the large quantities, with the number of meals that are served at a school district and across the Region 1 area, you cannot do that within a 1 week, 2 week time span, right? We are like months and months ahead of that time. So there's a lot of forecasting that happens. There's a lot of taste testing of product, and before it actually makes it on the tray, right? So that timeline is important to know. The market channel, this one is really interesting. This one determines whether a producer is going to use an intermediate market channel, meaning they go to local retail outlets, food hubs, regional distributors, or national wholesale distribution. Or if you want to do direct to school district, collective purchasing cooperatives, and buying groups. Region 1 hosts an annual or semi-annual vendor training where you come out to Region 1, and the procurement side of the house at Region 1 hosts a 101 for vendors so that they can become a vendor with a school district and learn how to do business with a government entity, because there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be completed. So you go through that process as well, and that's part of the services that we offer, which is training not just for school districts but also to vendors, to make sure that we are making the right connections and to ensure that there is competition and to ensure that there is the products that we want to see come into a school district. I included resources, links to the websites, and also a couple of handouts that would be pertinent for a vendor. But I do want to close quickly, and just to give you a little bit of context on what we are talking about today. When you talk about school districts and cafeterias and the meals that you receive, I want you to think about a drive-through at McDonald's, right? So we all know that McDonald's is a large franchise and a large chain. We drive up, we pay, I don't know what you pay because I have not gone to that drive-through in a while. But let's say it's a $5 meal. Did you know that the school district feeds and serves and generates 10 times the revenue of any franchise in Region 1, any franchise in McDonald's and a Burger King? Your child nutrition department at your school district is a lot bigger than any of those franchises, and that is important for you to know because it brings context to the quality and the nutrient level that you're receiving at your school cafeteria versus a fast food restaurant. Okay, so that is all I have. I appreciate the time that was given to me. I am available. I didn't bring business cards, but we can connect immediately after the panel.
Thank you, Carmen. So I have a few points, I guess. That's a lot of revenue that is coming in from the state and the federal government into the Rio Grande Valley because of these meals that are being served, right? That's a lot of money. 400 million, about, you said, right? That's not something I can even ever dream of having in my bank account. But it's a lot of money, which, kind of goes back to what you were saying. You also have a lot of, well, let me say this first. Each program that you have up there, just to drive this point home, National School Lunch Program, the breakfast, every single one of those is almost like its own, it's its own program, but it's its own account with its own sort of regulations and has to be managed a certain way. And operationally, right, you have to do things a certain way, handle the food a certain way. But also with the finances, there are certain things you can do with monies from the National School Lunch Program that you cannot do with the fruit and vegetable program. Is that right? So every single one of them has its own.
That is correct. Each program comes what I call with strings attached, and each string is different. So you have to be well versed in each one and what the requirements are, and what are the realm of the policy and guidance for each of the programs. So it's not very easy for a child nutrition director to manage 3 and 4. They usually need a team of people to help them with policy and guidance. You almost need a separate individual just to be running the procurement side and even the produce side of the programs.
Yeah, and I also noticed that you have a lot of resources for vendors, people who potentially want to sell to school districts, right? That's what Region 1 is oftentimes there to do, right? Help them. Yeah. Do you think that there's enough interest, or maybe not interest, do you think that vendors, growers, just vendors in general, do they utilize these resources that are available at Region 1, or do you kind of find them gathering dust because they're not being utilized?
I think that it's hard for them to find some of the resources like anybody. If somebody tells me, go and click on this link and it's going to provide you this information, I find myself sometimes in a struggle to find, let me borrow your- Sorry about that. I find myself in a struggle with finding, connecting those dots. And so Region 1 is a hub of information, and we call ourselves the helpers. And that's what we do. So we want to try to help people. We want to try to help the districts and making these connections to just make program improvements. You also mentioned something that was really important about how can a local farmer go in and conduct business with the school district. And one of the things that comes to mind, and I think that you could also speak to that, was the development of a local farm in a school district where they were not producing enough to fulfill the quantity and order for that particular district. And so what that district did is they reduced it to one campus. You're going to be the farmer for this one campus only. And it alleviates that stress and the challenge of, well, I can't produce 20,000 pounds of strawberry to fulfill your fresh fruit and vegetable program for after school, but I can definitely go and do Cavazos Elementary, right? Or Mission Junior High, just do one, so focus on that one. And then you let us worry about the procurement side. We just want to make sure that the partnerships are being developed, and we do the back of the house and figure out the logistics on the compliance and policy side.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Can you give the clicker to Sharon, please? Sharon, you can grab that mic over there. The mic. Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning, students, some of our staff and audience, and I do want to thank you for being here. I want to say on behalf of the Mission CISD Board of Trustees and our Superintendent, Dr. Carol G. Perez, who was unexpectedly called to another meeting this morning, I'm so happy to see all of our students here. And y'all are, yes, I agree with Ms. Ocaña, you're like college students. We're so proud of you. Mm-hmm. And, we're here to serve you. And one of the things that we do want to talk about is the reason you're here. You're here because about 2 years ago, we were able to start our Mission Farmers program. And I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Our Mission Farmers program, Farmers is an acronym that Mr. Mejia earlier when he did the welcome mentioned, stands for farmers, agriculturalists, ranchers, machinists, engineers, researchers, and suppliers. We wanted to make sure that everything that we did with Mission Farmers was not limited just to one area, but to every area of interest. And so December 31st of 2020, the district was able to purchase an 18.5 acres orchard on North Conway. And that orchard, we knew we were purchasing it for a future transportation department. However, our district is very, very good about taking care of their money, and we do not dip into the fund balance and things like that. So, we have the land now, so it'll be next will be about purchasing and getting the transportation department going. But in the meantime, we said, okay, what are we going to do with this orchard? So with this orchard, we were brainstorming, and actually on December 31st, like I said, we purchased that orchard. At January the 4th, we had convocation. Dr. Pettis, our superintendent, mentioned the orchard at convocation. Lo and behold, we had our teacher, Mr. Escamilla, is here somewhere, reached out to Dr. Pettis, sent her an email and said, hey, we can do all these things with the orchard. And so, lo and behold, before we knew it, Dr. Pettis and I met real quickly, and we said, hey, what can we do? How can we start engaging our students and growing? Remember that Mission is the home of the grapefruit, and we are we're founded as an agricultural community. So what we did next was we sat there one evening and we started talking about the different coursework. I called in the CTE director, and he said, oh, yeah, we'll be able to start in August. I'm here like, well, no, we're really looking at starting in a couple of weeks because we were fixing to have our second semester begin. And lo and behold, Mr. Escamilla was able to tell us, I have 11 students and the list is growing. And so we started in January. Within 2 weeks, we started our Mission Farmers program at the high schools because of student interest. we were at a principal's instructional leadership seminar, and of course, veteran says, hey, what about us? And so we said, well, do you have a teacher? Do you have student interest? And lo and behold, Ms. Mendez rose to the occasion, got some students, and we started it at Veterans Memorial. And it's almost, and we're so excited, I get goosebumps because you know what, boys and girls, it's about you, and it's about your future and what we can do to make a difference in your life. And lo and behold, now I can say that we have mission farmers from pre-K 3-year-olds all the way to high school. Every campus and in Mission CISD, including our 18-plus Titans program that is for our special needs students, and our Roosevelt Alternative School, all have a mission farmers program. The kids are out there daily checking their crops, growing, and just really enjoying being able to grow crops and being able to have them and eat them in their classrooms. And so we're really excited about that. And I go way off topic, so I haven't, let me see my PowerPoint. Sorry. So this was our orchard. And so now what we've done, we have not, you all boys and girls will know that we haven't been able to move to the orchard yet, but guess what? It's coming. Maybe January or February, you'll be able to start going to the orchard. We're working on, we've already moved portables there. There are agriculture labs that are being set up as we speak. Both high schools through the Rotary Club now have greenhouses that were put up this week. We just received them, and our maintenance department has been tremendous in helping us. They're working to set up the greenhouses at each high school. One of the teachers was just asking me, are we going to move those greenhouses to the orchard? We're here like, nope, they're permanent at your campus. And you'll know at both of your high schools, y'all have growing gardens, and you have different areas of agriculture going on at your high schools. And that's a real attribute just to you all, because y'all have done tremendous work. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of times we look for heroes to inspire us, but guess what? You all, boys and girls, have inspired us to try to do more for you and to try to help you in every dream that you have in Mission CISD. We do have lots of programs of study. I know that somebody mentioned, agriculture. And you know what, you can be a farmer, but you can also be an engineer. Part of our program with Mission Farmers, we have drones. We have probably one of the largest drone fleets in South Texas. We have over 160 drones just through our high school program. All of our elementaries have drones. Our engineering classes, do robotics. You can also we do photo voice with our Mission Rotary. Our Rotary has been a tremendous partner for us. And we do photo voice. You can go into marketing and business and make a business plan. So there's numerous programs of study that you can do through Mission Farmers or any agricultural program. This is a great picture from Mission High School, Mr. Escamilla's class, because when we talked about starting Mission Farmers at our 14 elementary campuses, guess who built their raised beds? They were from students at Mission High School for each elementary campus that built their raised beds, and they're mentoring and helping our students in elementary. So it's something that's not just for one campus or another, but it's a district-wide. And we can't do any of the things that we do without our community partners. We have quite a few community partners. We just received a grant, and actually the students in junior high, they've been having Saturday workshops at K White Junior High for all the junior high kids through Texas AgriLife. And this is about wellness and emotional well-being. And they're starting little gardens there as well. Everything we do is about gardening now, so we're excited. Looking ahead, we are partnering, of course, with Rotary. The Rotary Club has been instrumental. Last year, I believe we received one of the first ever global grants through the Rotary. And the Rotary Club was able to provide those 2 greenhouses and ATV for our farmers program at the orchard, as well as a really nice big drone. And then we've already been speaking with them about another grant that they have coming up, and that grant is for aquaponics. We're looking at growing aquaponics and hydroponics programs at both of our high schools as well as our junior highs. We want to have vertical gardens at our elementaries, and we want each junior high to be able to have a plat of land at the Mission Farmers program on Conway at the orchard. Right now, both high schools have at least 1 acre designated just to your program, plus what you have on your campus. One of the things that Rotary does is that they engage the community and areas and everything that they do. It is really about addressing food insecurity. And so what they want to do is they want to partner with us if we are able to get this next grant on being able to prototype some type of food sustainability that can be used in lower socioeconomic countries such as Nicaragua, Guatemala, and the Ukraine. And that's where we are. We're excited to be here today because one of the greatest questions that we have had, and our dream and our vision, and sometimes it takes a while, but our dream and our vision is to be able to have our students grow crops that can be used in our child nutrition program. And I'm so glad that Ms. Ocañas just mentioned, because I kept thinking, do you know that our food services, our child nutrition program delivers 14,500 lunches per day throughout the district, not to mention 11,000 breakfasts and over 8,000 dinners. And so that means that they have a lot, like Ms. Ocaña said, there's a lot of food being transported and used by our child nutrition program. So ideally, we can work with Mr. Maggiano and Ms. Ocañas and figure out how can y'all grow some of the crops that can be used by our child nutrition program. I know that right now, our high school, some of the crops that y'all are growing, where are y'all donating them to? Where? The food banks. Y'all have been very instrumental in donating food to the food banks. I know the culinary arts programs are using some of the foods that y'all are growing and the things that they are making and creating. And so it's all about community. It's about our community and mission, but our community among schools. And we just thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. I really like that innovative concept that instead of, well, maybe not instead of, but in addition to trying to procure local produce and serve that in the cafeterias, you're also growing it within the school districts, right? And you're sort of working your way into making that, having that food go into the school meals that are being served. So I think that's a very innovative concept, as you both mentioned. I'm also intrigued by all of these partnerships because we're in such a unique place in the world, right? On the border between two countries, and it's two worlds apart. Mexico is considered a developing country. The United States is a global power. And so how do we leverage our place in the world so that we all benefit, right? Given our productivity in terms of agricultural capacity and our needs as human beings, but also the surplus that can come about if we're well organized. And I think it's fascinating that you're partnering with the Rotary Club, which I have to say I'm also a member of the same Rotary Club as you, and making that sort of replicating these programs in other places that they can be found useful in. So thank you so much, Dr. Roberts, for your comments. Now we have Mike and Jesus Lozano. You all can share the mic or, go back and forth between you.
Good morning, everyone. First, on behalf of Triple J Organics, my father and I, we are very grateful and honored to be here, part of this panel discussion today. It is a privilege. I know when Robert reached out to us and asked us, invited us if we were interested in participating, I said, yeah, of course, I'm excited. Reason being is my father, he's been working in farms pretty much all his life. He took it upon himself to break away from working for other farmers in the valley and started up his own business in 1995. So he's been farming all his life, but he started his own business in 1995, and it all started in the backyard of our home when we were living in Far, Texas. It all happened right around the same age as you. I was a high school student, and here was my father going into the backyard, interfering with my basketball court that I had put together, and he was building a contraption, which was a conveyor assembly, to run oranges through brushes to clean them, and then they would fall into a packing table that he had designed and created on his own without any help or any research, because there wasn't internet back then. And little by little, I mean, he was packing 27 cases, which is half a pallet, and shipping it off to a business company. And I mean, it started in the backyard, and then from there, the supply and demand grew. So he went ahead and built a packing shed over in Mission, North Mission, which is on 9.5 Mile in Trosper. And that packing shed started off as a small little block with just a roof shed, but the demand for more produce was being asked, and he had to expand that. But during this time, I was already gone to college at A&M, pursuing my degree in biomedical science. So all this expansion he was doing on his own. And when I come back, I mean, the facility or the backyard that he started in was gone, and now he had this full-blown packing shed in Mission. And from there, business took off. Like I said, he's been in business in citrus organics since 1995. And I guess, Dad, I don't know if you want to add some words or share some words.
He said it all.
So, I mean, if there's anything, and that's why I'm real excited to be here before you, is if there is anything that you wanted to know about organic citrus, particularly citrus, this is the man to ask. He's been doing it, like I said, all his life. But I think where he really took off and grew as a farmer is when, after the 1983 freeze that hit the valley and pretty much wiped out a great amount of citrus trees in Mission, particularly because Mission was known for being the citrus city. He was one of the few that went out along with my grandfather and journeyed into a path that was very uncertain, didn't know what was going to be the outcome, and started up replanting, rebudding, and grafting citrus trees, which is now what we call our headquarters. It's a 9-acre farm on North Half Mile in Trosper, and because of that little farm, that's where he was able to expand his business and service and maintain other citrus groves to expand his business. So it's real exciting to be here because if you want to know, like I mentioned, anything about citrus, being a farmer, starting up your farming there on Conway, this is the man to ask. Like his experience and knowledge it surpasses what a typical individual that you may have. I'm involved in the business, but on the other end, which deals with a lot of policies and procedures and safety. I am the food safety coordinator. Aside from being an assistant principal at McAllen Memorial High School, I help him part-time in a system with the food safety certification and maintenance of the business. And then I also help him with the food defense plan. And a little bit we transitioned a lot of the maintenance and records. It used to be hand, paper, written, and we transitioned into using a lot of the Google Drive, Google Forms, Google Docs. A lot of that I incorporated into the business to make it more easy for him to manage and maintain his records. So on the day that he has an audit, it's easy for him to pull out those records on a spreadsheet. You can organize those spreadsheets and color code it however you like, and it's easy for the auditor to, yeah, you've been monitoring, maintaining your records accurately, and you're good to go. So every year he has to go through an audit for organic certification and then for food safety, just to be in compliance to sell and supply to any of our vendors that wish to purchase our fruit. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. So I have a few things that I want to touch on just because for our audience that's listening in on the live stream, they may not be in the Rio Grande Valley, so they don't know that we actually have a 365-year-round growing season here in the valley. And so when you say the 1983 freeze, it was an event because it rarely freezes here in the Rio Grande Valley. And so when it does, I mean, that's why we can grow citrus here, because it's the perfect climate for it over the winter. And so when it does freeze, it can be a very devastating economic event for growers in general. So just a little bit of context. I also found it funny, but it's very true that, Jesus, you've been designing all of these contraptions because I was taking an IQ test some time back, and on the instructions or on the data that came with it, it said that farmers, on average, have a higher than average IQ, and I think that's something about the industry, something about the career of being a grower, of being be it a grower or a cattleman or rancher. It draws people with higher IQs because you're having to do a whole lot of things like accounting. You're having to engineer, as Jesus was doing. You're having to engineer these contraptions that don't even exist. You're sort of creating them in your own mind. You're having to figure out the food safety issues. You have to know botany to a certain extent to make these plants grow or help them grow. And so all of these things are what make it so enticing for people who, on average, have higher average intelligence levels. So I find that very very funny because it's sort of coming about right now. I bet if we were to take your IQ, it'd be, I don't know, higher than probably the rest of us. And I also want to say that the Rio Grande Valley, for a time, I'm not sure if this is still the case, but at least a few years ago, had the highest number of organic growers in the area in Texas. And so so let me rephrase that. Had the highest density of organic growers, certified organic growers in the state of Texas. And so that tells you a lot, right? There's a lot of interest in this type of market, but also, the fertility of our soil it's great, but also, our capacity to be so productive it also plays a role in all of that. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here, and we're about to transition over into the next. Actually, if I can have the clicker there, wherever it ended up. Thank you. We're about to transition into some questions. Now, I'm going to direct a question to one of the panelists, but I want all of you to chime in. If you have some comments, even if it's just, any comment, not necessarily a question, just chime in. We can share the mics between us. But Robert, I'll start with you. And I think I may have some follow-up question for you, Carmen, on this question. But what type of interest do you perceive from people in your industry as a wholesale distributor, or as a distributor, sort of playing this middle person? Is there a lot of interest to work with school districts be it from traditional distributors or other distributors that are like-minded for the common market?
Well, a simple answer is yes, and the main reason is because, as all of us have implied, school food service is big business. It's the biggest food service that you can think of in any given community. When you look at it as together, like I think was Carmen mentioned, it's way big. You think McDonald's is big food business. In any given community, the school food service is way bigger. And so there's that business interest right off the bat of wholesalers to get involved. There are also some other aspects of it that relate to the policies and procedures that are in place that the federal government makes school districts follow, that gives wholesalers some trouble. And when you ask anybody in our industry, do they want to sell to schools, they go, yeah, but they're always price takers. They want the lowest price on everything, and they beat you down for a quarter. And so I realize there's a lot of myths that go around, but when you talk to wholesalers, that's often kind of the impression that they give you, that yes, they want to do it because they realize it's big business, it's big volume, but they realize that there's a lot of hoops and ladders that they got to jump through.
Yeah, so yes, but got it. And so, Carmen, do you see interest on the schools side? I know you work a lot with child nutrition program directors at the school level. Are the benefits to having locally grown, sustainably grown produce that is much more nutritiously dense? Are the benefits clear to the leadership on how it's going to impact their students? Attendance will probably go up, behavioral issues will probably go down, all of these things. Is that clear, and does that cause them to have more interest?
Well, here, you need to picture a food service director, and that is my audience is the child nutrition director. And you need to see these folks as having two sides of their brain and one heart. And the two sides of the brain, one is going to be, I have to be compliant, I have to be financially stable. And the heart says, I got to feed these kids wholesome, great food that is nutrient rich. One of the things that I hear from a couple of child nutrition directors that may be in, I call, rural areas, and it could be the Delta area and stuff, is that when they contact some of the vendors, they will not receive quotes back. There's lack of interest. When I told them, have you called them and asked them why they're not quoting you out? They'll say, well, I've called them several times, nobody's answering the phone. So the mystery is we don't know if they're short-staffed like everybody else, if they're out making a delivery, maybe they don't have the trucks to deliver, but we have not figured out why there is a lack of response, and it's unique to the outlying areas of I don't foresee Edinburgh having that kind of issue, but I do see a San Isidro having an issue if somebody deliver, a small load. So price is always going to be one that is at the top, and then the ranking or the rating scale then becomes the latter. The other thing to consider also is the child nutrition. Since it's mandated at the federal level, there is another provision in law that's called the Buy American provision. So we have to meet the Buy American to the maximum extent possible. That means that the school district now is charged with the responsibility of completing additional paperwork if they opt with produce that is not domestic. And sometimes some of the recipes at the school can include a cilantro or jalapeno pepper or a tomato that is from Mexico, because we're so close to the border. There are exceptions to this rule, but it just requires you to do a little bit more documentation. So it's multi-layered. One of them is the response out to the smaller district. And then the other one is on a bigger district, having the response from the same individual and the same person being the one awarded vendor.
So it seems like some schools are interested, but they just don't have that buying power, that volume, which leads distributors or growers to say, yes, I'd like to sell to you, but you're way out there. I just can't do it for one crate of oranges maybe, right? And the other thing is the issues of the paperwork that follows buying not local, non-domestic products. Okay, that makes sense. And so I guess I'll move over to this question here. What are some of the biggest obstacles from your vantage point? And I'll direct this question to Dr. Roberts here. I know you're not in procurement. Your focus is a curriculum and instruction, but on the teachers, what are some obstacles to buying local, and I'll follow it up with perhaps with you all. What are obstacles to selling to school districts? But Dr. Roberts, you can take that first half.
I believe it is what has been said. It's the quantity and then also the quality of the produce and things that we have to look at. I think it's the procurement and actually just education, maybe in general, how we can get better educated on the processes of securing locally grown food, the prices. I know that I was working with our child nutrition director, Rosary Woodrum, and she was telling me some different areas that have to be considered. But I really liked what Ms. Ocaña said. I'm going to say it again, that, if we're thinking, oh my goodness, 11,000 breakfasts daily, 14,500 lunches daily, not to mention dinners, how does a little farm produce enough food for that? But by going with like one campus or something like that might be some way we can start. And I think just really getting educated on the procurement process, on all of the ways that we work with local vendors. And, that is a different department, and not that I want to shirk that, but I want to be, I'm interested in that now, and I want to make sure that we can kind of work together, because it is about, being in our community, using what our community can produce to feed our students, and especially when the students are doing the growing, what better way for them to see, hey, I had a hand in this, and, hey, we were the ones that grew this or grew that, and are able now to provide a meal to someone. So that's awesome. So
I guess let me follow up. Perhaps a question to both of you. Do you think that, since you mentioned having or selling to one school so that the volume is not an issue, does that remove, so operationally, it makes it easier, right? One farmer, one school, maybe a few farmers, one school. Does that make it easier on the paperwork side of things, or is it still a hassle and a headache to do all of this paperwork on the back end?
The comment or idea about doing business at the local level with one campus rather than the entire district is more of a quantity issue. Not the procurement stays the same. You still have to procure the items. You still have to vet the vendor, make sure that they meet all of the criteria to become a vendor with the school district. However, I'm talking about having two sets of procurement pieces. One that is district-wide. Let's say you're doing 13,000 meals goes on this bid, but this 1,000 meals, which is exclusive to this campus, goes on a separate bid or quotation for locally grown produce or one that can be met using a criteria of 50-mile radius or under. And with the, also with the having access to the farm for tours. So when you start adding these different pieces, now you're compliant with the procurement piece because you're using a local vendor. You added a geographical area, and you also added another component that includes a possible tour of the farm. And so now you end up in a school district level having two different contracts. One that is the majority of, campus 1 through 14, but campus 15 goes under this other procurement piece or contract.
So I want to direct this question to Triple J. Either one of you can answer. Is that feasible for a farm like yours or an orchard like yours where you can win these bids by providing other value that another wholesale distributor may not be able to do, right? So Carmen mentioned having farm visits. If you can open up your farm for students to go and visit, then that gives you points, which gives you a better chance at winning that bid. Is that feasible for a farm that's your size? Are you interested in doing that, or is that just another obstacle for a farm like you?
Yeah, it is something that's feasible. The only thing we'd have to do is just make sure that we go over any food safety requirements. And of course, there's a visitor sign-in sheet. So those are all requirements for our food safety contracts that we have with TDA, USDA. So it's not an issue.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because, like you're saying, if you have a sort of separate procurement process, even though it's following all of the same policies, but you're really tailoring it to take advantage of all of the rich resources we have around here. Lots of local growers, lots of organic growers, and they're interested. They're interested in working with the youth, doing what we're doing here, showcasing careers, potential careers that are fascinating. When I was younger, I thought agriculture was kind of boring, but when I actually learned about it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is fascinating. This is what I want to be doing, even if I just talk about it all the time. But yeah, so it sounds like there's some possibilities to work together here. What are some potential, do you foresee any other obstacles in working with schools? Do you think that the paperwork is too, I mean, what are some obstacles to working with schools? I'll leave it at that.
As being a previous special education educator, I make paperwork doesn't faze me. But one of the obstacles we have had is the variety and the sizes. Unfortunately, the variety of oranges that we have in our farm they're termed as early season oranges, Mars oranges, Hamlin oranges. Those oranges, they come into season late October, and they'll run into January and February. One of the issues with that particular variety is if it keeps on raining, they're going to continue to grow. And they grow at different sizes. It's not something that's marketable in large volumes to vendors because they're very particular on the size of fruit because it's all about quantity, how many they can get packed into a box. So that's where we start to run into some obstacles that we need to overcome. The other variety of citrus oranges that are available are called the Valencia. They're very popular, being grown in Mexico and South America, and even in Africa. And they grow at different times of the year. Those, if they were to be grown in the valley, those varieties don't come into season till mid-February, March? About March, and then their season will run into June. So that's one of the obstacles that we have is the orange varieties that we have only runs from late October up until late February. After that, we have no more oranges to supply. And then if the season extends into that month of February, we're going to have a lot of oranges of different sizes that are going to, go against what the supply is being asked, what they're asking for.
Yeah, so you brought up the size issues. In agriculture, the USDA at least sort of places grades on products, and this is any agricultural product, right? And so there's grade A, that's the top of the line, right? That's the best of the best. That's what we see at our grocery stores, be it H-E-B, whatever, right? For those viewers on the live stream, H-E-B is a massive grocer here in Texas. They sort of dominate the market in terms of groceries or grocery stores. But then there's also grade B and so on and so forth, and that's what you're referring to, right? The stuff that is not sold typically in the grocers, or that gets used for juice or things like that, right? Because they have either blemishes or they're not the right size, quote unquote. And so I wonder if schools, if they need to take the grade A product always, or if there's room for accepting grade B at a discounted price, or if that's even possible to discount those prices, right? I mean, do you think schools can take those products, or does that present its own sort of issues because of?
I say let's do it. Here's a little bit history. And you have some back there in the bag. So are those the 138s or the?
There's a bag of 138s and a bag of 113s.
Right. So we in food service we call oranges and whole fruit and fresh fruit by the number of items that fit inside of a box. It is very structured. And the structure is related to how that item is going to appear in our food buying guide. So as a child nutrition director, I'm going to go look for the 138 because I know that out of that 138, I'm going to get a half cup fruit serving. If you send me a bigger product, I'm going to go a little bit crazy. And I'm going to go crazy because I don't know what to do with it. And there's no time to stop. Remember, this plane is mid-flight and we're trying to fix it right? So it's very difficult to do an oil change in a plane that's mid-flight. I know that's a bad analogy, but that is how we plan menus based on this food Bible that's called the Food Buying Guide, and all of the food is described inside of this Bible, inside of this book. And so saying that I want, Mr. Lozano, I want a 138 because I want to make sure that it gives me that half cup serving. If you grow something smaller, it's not a big deal. You can adjust, communicate. The director now needs to cut that product in half and serve it in orange smiles, which I understand is the better way to do this because I was a food service director for many, many years and I encountered a lot of food fights. Guys, don't do that. Don't do that, and don't do that with whole fruit because we did have a student, as a matter of fact, at Memorial High School, go Mustangs, and there was a big food fight in this high school, and they tossed whole apples and whole oranges at each other, and one student lost his braces. Like, I think the only thing that, he lost several teeth, but the only thing that kept the teeth together was the braces. So immediately he went into to surgery and have all of that fixed. So I'm aware of the nightmare that goes on. And so back to sizes. As a food service director, we try not to serve whole fruits because of that. So we try to cut it. When you start cutting things like that, remember, you're talking about 14,000 pieces of fruit that somebody is trying to cut and to put out by 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. So the clock is always ticking and it never stops and it's unforgiving. Back to the original question, because I do tend to go off on tangents because I love what I do, but communicating with the child nutrition director and having that open line of communication and talking about what is coming up off the ground or from a tree is detrimental. If we all know in the environment that we live in, and if the tree is not giving or is giving lesser than, communicate that. We can work together. It just means that we're going to have to go tap into another resource, which is probably the labor side. I don't see anything wrong with serving 2 pieces of orange if it yielded that small. And also remember the logistics, because of the large quantities, it's all related to warehousing. It's how I receive it in a box and how heavy is it for me to pick up. So all of that was already worked out in the market, and that is the reason for, the 138s and the different varieties. But I say, grow them, and we'll eat them.
Let me just make sure that we're all clear about the sizing and the grading are different issues. They're related, but they're different. When she's talking about the 113 and the 138, that's a sizing question. How many pieces of fruit does it take to make a half a cup serving for a child? The grade issue is, in my opinion, is much more important for farmers because, particularly in the instance of the Lozanos, if we could get the school districts to spec or make specifications that they could accept grade B fruit rather than U.S. Fancy or U.S. Extra Fancy, that could help farmers like the Lozanos run their business where they have different customers. They could sell the fruit that does grade USA #1 extra fancy to Whole Foods or HEB or the retailers who really have to play on the cosmetics of the fruit, because cosmetics, the appearance of the fruit, when you ask retailers, that's the #1 value that the customers look for. It's not important, not so important, in my opinion and other opinions, as to the school food service. So I'm hoping that in your efforts with Region 1, as you talk with all the food service directors around your region, that you can get them to think about, well, let's not just routinely spec USDA #1 extra fancy on everything that we spec.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Robert. And so it seems like as long as there is a solid partnership between the director, the Child Nutrition Program director, and the grower, even as obstacles arise, as issues arise, they're not insurmountable. They can be overcome as long as that line of communication is open, right? Which, granted, may take more time being on the phone, sending emails, but it seems like if that is what will help the local economy by helping the local businesses be more resilient, and having students and anyone who's participating in these meal programs eat healthier food because it's more nutritionally dense and probably harvested. The harvest date is closer to when it was consumed. For all of these reasons, they're winning. The nutrition program is winning. The growers are winning. So it sounds like it can be done. It just needs to. The partnerships have to start small. And so I wonder, it's not just driven by economic or monetary gain, or are growers looking to make the most buck for their product, or is there some leeway to say, you know what, we're making a little bit less here, but we're serving my kids and their peers, and is there some leeway, or does it have to be driven solely by the monetary gain?
Yes, most of the time I give them leeway, but my prices are always basically the same. I try to get more business by keeping my price fair. And this year I noticed our price is a little bit less than what the commercial people are. So it's close around there, but.
Yeah, it's interesting that you note that, because I think commercial producers are more subject to the whims of the global market. Fertilizer prices shoot up. They're stuck to that, right? There's a war halfway across the world, and that impacts them. Whereas, as a small grower, you're much more resilient to those global events because one, you're organically certified, and it seems like you're growing in a much more sustainable manner, and not just organic. But you become much more resilient, and that's really what we want to see, right? We want to see resiliency in the food system, so that when there are shocks like a global pandemic, we can weather them a little bit more with less chaos, rather. Great. So I guess the last question, speaking for your respective industries, how could more schools buy more agricultural products from local producers? And we've touched on this, but I guess I want to hear you say it out loud, right? It is the first step doing what you said, Carmen, writing these policies on paper and putting them out in a formal bid. What is the first step? I guess I'll start with you, Carmen.
I would say that the first step could be school districts need to know where the farms are at. I know that Mission knows exactly, right, because they're the home of the citrus industry, of the grapefruit, and they pride themselves, and you see it driving through downtown, all of the different logos and things related to the grapefruit and citrus industry. But I think that school districts would benefit from finding out where the farms are at, and likewise, the farmer that is wanting and is ready to come in to do business with the school district needs to start making that call, that let's start inquiring about where can I find information. Contact your local food service director and introduce yourself. Contact Region 1 and we can give you a list of names and phone numbers and people that are a good resource to start having these conversations with them.
What about you, Robert? What do you think the first step needs to be, you and your industry?
I would say it's to get commitment from the folks who run the school district. We're talking about values-added procurement here. That's different than just the normal run-of-the-mill of procurement. It is different. It's going to be, I won't say necessarily harder work forever, but it's going to be, Carmen was talking about making a separate contract for one school. That's extra work. Let's be clear about it. That's extra paperwork. Yeah, they have to follow all the guidelines of everybody else, but it is extra work. And so we're talking about learning how to do things and incorporate different values. So you have to get the commitment from the superintendent, the commitment from the food service director, from the cafeteria managers. They all have to understand why are we, the collective we, why are we doing this? Why don't we just push one button and Cisco delivers everything and we're good to go? We're saying let's get out of that game. And so I think we have to get the commitment from the staff to say, well, let's examine how we can do this. And we can figure it out. Carmen, she does Region 1 down here. There's 20 other regions around, or 19 other regions around the state that do the same thing where they are, that can be that interface between the food service directors and folks like us. We can work with farmers who want to do that. It's important that they, I keep coming back to this thing. It's a big deal for me about not always putting on your specifications USDA #1 extra fancy. That's a big problem. So I think things like that, we can work it out.
Well, luckily we have the deputy superintendent here who can, hit the hammer and say, this is what we're going to do, right? No, I'm kidding. But I guess a question to you, Dr. Roberts, do you think that there would be resistance if you were to say, you know what, this is the new strategy moving forward for and granted, again, you're not the deputy superintendent overseeing the CNP department, right? But if that were to happen, would there be resistance from the staff on the ground in the CNP programs, in the cafeterias? Do you think that there will be resistance or people will welcome this?
I don't think it's so much resistance as education. I will say, I do think that one of the very first steps has to be bringing everybody together at a table to really discuss what are the processes, how can we do these things, because we come from an agricultural community. That's where Mission was founded on that. So I don't think that there's resistance. We may not know how to do it, but I think it's working around how to do that and bringing the right people to a discussion, like bringing the growers with people that are very knowledgeable in the CNP, with the procurement process, things like that. I think that's where it has to start, so that we can we would love to have our Mission Farmers program be able to serve some of their food, in our schools. We would just absolutely love that. I think, boys and girls, would y'all like that? Yes? Yes, and so I think I think the first step is to bring everybody together for a real discussion on what the steps are. I've learned, I'm going to say, I don't know about you all, but boy, I've learned more than I ever thought I knew about CNP and about all the processes, about where they come up with numbers. This is amazing. I've learned a lot this morning, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And so the last follow-up question for you gentlemen is, what's the first step for you? Carmen mentioned school districts need to contact growers and growers need to contact them, right, to see how can we make this happen. But from your end, what do you think the first step is for you and other growers like you?
Two critical steps that do need to happen is obviously, I agree with Carmen, the communication. Farmers reaching out to either, whether it be Region 1 directors, or reaching out to school districts and just communicating to let them know that we are an established company, business, that does have the food safety requirements or certification requirements that are needed in order to supply produce. And then the second component is going to be educating. Why should school districts or even the Region 1 consider buying, for example, Triple J farms? And one of the things that my dad takes pride in his company is it's inorganic. And I do apologize if we didn't clarify what is organic, what is it composed of. Being organic certified means that the company does not use any chemicals, any pesticides, any, in our case, we don't have any type of preservatives added onto our citrus. So we're basically growing the fruit, picking it off the tree, running it through a cleaning assembly, and then packing it and then shipping it out to you. The preservatives part is what extends the life shelf span of either a produce or a juice. So the longer it has a shelf life, that means preservatives were added to it. Our fruit, we don't add preservatives. We don't add wax to it. It has an immediate shelf life that needs to be consumed. And that's one of the things that my father and his company has taken pride in, is making sure that we naturally grow fruit, citrus fruit, whether it be the oranges or the grapefruit, and have it shipped to the consumers so that you're being guaranteed that you're eating naturally grown, genuine citrus fruit.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I think that just about wraps us up. If there are any questions, Alex will figure that out.
Okay, we are over time. Thank you for the live stream audience who has been very patient with us. I know that there's a lot of questions coming in, but we actually only really have time for maybe one question, and I'd like to make sure that the audience here has time to ask a question. Do we have a question from one of the students in the audience? Yeah, you mind? Let me just come to you really quick. All right. Yes, please. Go ahead and stand up.
My name is Heriberto Hernandez. I'm a student in Mr. Escamilla's greenhouse class. My question is for Dr. Sharon. Would MCISD be willing to invest more in local foods?
Yes, I do believe we would be able to invest more. We'd be willing to do that. We just need to make sure that, like when we talk about from farm to table, that all the compliance is in order, because, we want to make sure that we're serving healthy foods for our boys and girls and that nothing's contaminated or anything like that. So that's why the feds have all these regulations as well. So I do think that is something that we would love to be able to do. Yes.
I think that's Eddie asks a really good question, right? Because ultimately, it's about the welfare of the people who both consume the food and who grow the food, right? And so we're talking about a system right now where I would guess to say that a lot of the citrus being served in the Rio Grande Valley either comes from California and from Florida, and there's a lot of price there that you're saying, well, we also, the two sides of my brain, I would love to buy Texas citrus, but it's cheaper to buy this citrus that comes from California, right? And so when we study agriculture here at UTRGV, we have an agriculture, a degree in sustainable agriculture and food systems. And a lot of our students know that that price doesn't reflect the true price of the product, right? So that price that comes from California travels 1,800 miles to get here from Central California, and that added carbon, the added footprint of that, the added energy of that is part of the price that we pay, right, for that product. Now, we pay in general, but nobody actually pays that. But there's no price there. These kids are going to pay for the price of climate change, right? And some of the farmers who come behind the Lozanos will have to pay for that price. So there's really a discussion about, well, if it comes down to price, who's going to pay for it? And again, with the understanding that somebody pays for it. If it's not the school district and it's not the farmers, then it's going to be the communities that live and work in agricultural areas, and in particular the RGV. So this discussion that we've had today is really about something that we call food sovereignty. Who decides what we eat and how we get to eat it? And often that's the discussion that you've heard this morning from the nutritionists and the dietitians and the folks who study the value of food. Well, part of that value comes in the way that food is grown, like certified organic family farms like the Lozanos, to the way that it's procured with the common market, and the way that and who purchases it and serves it, right, with our school districts. That's a conversation that I think students in the audience, you can have with your schools, and then you can ask your teachers and your administrators, like, how can we help? What can we do? Can we grow the food as part of our studies? Can we give you extra motivation to support our agriculture here in the Rio Grande Valley? You know, I mean, as I mentioned to you guys, we produce more fruits than anywhere else in the state, and we also produce more vegetables than anywhere else in the state. And yet we still have these issues that we're dealing with, in addition to issues around climate change and inequality. So that's the what I'd like to leave this conversation at. And I'm hoping that the panelists here can continue to have that conversation. We can learn from each other about these challenges and obstacles, and how we can overcome those obstacles together, that we make our own decisions about the welfare of our communities. You know, and we don't have to rely on somewhere else, or, you know, maybe we do, and we continue to ask help from the Rotary Club, or from granting agencies, or from other institutions that have health and wellness and sustainability in their own bottom lines. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to the audience who've joined us from afar, and special thanks to the audience who's here present. And then, of course, a final special thanks to our panelists and our panelist moderator, who have helped stimulate you know, our ideas around food procurement, and who will continue the conversation moving forward. Thank you all.